There. Recording.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you very much for coming to today. Join us for today's AIAA Los Angeles, Las Vegas very special event in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. for this Memorial Day and for this service. And we have great speaker and panelists. So it's a great occasion. And this session will be recorded and posted online, so more people can and join us. Because on Monday some people might have to work, but we'll post online so more people can. Uh, Enjoy it, for the great, event today. So first of all, because during the process of setting up this event, we got some question because whether we are AIAA is a professional society, but this is not the first time we do this, but I just want to let people know this is going to be not just a memorial because this is, it's a combination because we have people out of, African American minority working in aerospace or STEM field. So this is a great time to learn from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy and, learning from his words and people share what's their experience, inspiration from his deed or words and the difficulties or experience when they work in aerospace. So it is this related, it's a great combination. And so right now, so as you know, AIAA is American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. And we are the Los Angeles, Las Vegas section. Our headquarters is, this national headquarters is Washington, D.C. Local headquarters is El Segundo, California. Right in the heart of the local aerospace community. So a lot of people here today are in aerospace or with Air Force, in Apollo mission, or doing great, event for related STEM activity, or in general in science and the STEM field. So we have a lot to discuss and learn, share today. So this is amazing. So as you know, Southern California is heavily populated with aerospace and scientific engineering activities, education. So it's a great area, it's highly blessed. And and of course, National AIAA is the leading society in aerospace. So that, and we have membership program and many professional associate program for people working in aerospace, but we have free educator membership and also inexpensive student membership, so people can start to learn at early age. Many of members stay with AIAA for a long time, but some people join related, but all in one great family. So if any question, please let us know. And the Q&A, please try to, unless it's something, the speaker would like to answer right away, but because we have to stay on schedule to start a panel around 10:55, so you can direct all the question in the panel session. You're welcome to type in your question in the Q&A box. But during the panel discussion, depending on the moderator's arrangement, we can enable you. So you are welcome to speak out. If you need it, you can click raise hand. So that's all for the logistics. So let's welcome the first speaker, Mr. Shelby Jacobs. He's distinguished aerospace engineer. And let me see quickly. He has long years of experience, and most notably, he's the famous Earth view photo was taken by him and his camera. And we'll have a video and also some picture. I mean, newspaper cover page for you to review, and he's going to inspire us today. So let's welcome Mr. Shelby Jacobs. So let's do, and so we'll start with a video so you can see his career and learn more from him. So here it is. Enjoy.
My name is Shelby Jacobs. I was born April 27th, 1935 in Dallas, Texas. Migrated to California as an 8-year-old. I was accustomed to the segregation in terms of housing and schooling and everything. As a matter of fact, I had to walk by a white school and a Mexican school en route to the black school. And as I progressed through high school, being an honor student and a four-year athlete and class president, when my principal of the school found out that I had chosen engineering, he said, "Shelby, there are no black engineers. I recommend you take a trade." I responded to that by not saying anything to him. It didn't anger me. It was my first moment of what I consider divine intervention. I considered that he was telling me that the odds would be great, and I was willing to accept that challenge. And I wanted to pursue something that they said couldn't be done, in spite of the fact that that may be true. I wanted to prepare myself in case the doors ever opened, and they did. But my motivation was continually stimulated by the low expectations of people in general. They did not perceive that we could do things on the same basis, much as they had gone through in athletics and other things. We were kept out of a lot of things, presumed we couldn't do it. And in this arena, I was committed to proving, contrary to the assumption that we were not capable, we're inferior of doing these things, and that was a constant motivator. Growing up in areas remote, I was totally unaware of NASA, and when I got involved in pursuing engineering based on academic excellence, I didn't have a clue what NASA was. Even when I started to work for North American, which became Rockwell, I didn't know they were contracted to NASA. That evolved afterwards. So I was kind of like a career chosen in the dark, truly blind faith. I hadn't a clue that I could be that. In fact, I was told that there were no black engineers, but I pursued it in spite of that. The technology that I was responsible for designing was a camera system that was provided, the cameras themselves were provided to us by NASA from prior programs. I got the assignment to adapt that system to the Apollo, which was the most powerful vehicle we had ever undertaken, to make sure that the cameras would endure the environment in order to capture the film that were required to prove that the separation was in fact valid. The results of my work of installing these cameras on the Saturn, which was the second stage of the Apollo, was the iconic photos that we see of the inner stage separating and tumbling away in the distance, which was visual evidence that in fact it did not contact or in any way disturb the vehicle. But what you see is the iconic photograph of the Earth's curvature, and it kind of led to the resolution to the Earth is flat versus the Earth is round. I remember back sometime during Cesar Chavez where the phrase "si se puede." Well, I was one of those, it can be done, long before that became a coined phrase. I was practicing that from the 1950s. I'm a strong proponent of equality to the nth degree. Whatever you can do should be permitted to do that. As a female or as anybody else, there should be no distinctions prejudicing your skills or your career path.
Okay, here's the second video from the San Diego newsletter today, feature Mr. Shelby Jacobs.
I am so excited for our next guest. Shelby Jacobs is a NASA hidden figure who is responsible for.
That's not the one. It's the next one.
that?
It was not as much avoidance as the need to assimilate. It's the next video.
Yeah, I know. Just wait a second. Okay, it's coming.
Okay. That looks like it, yeah.
But no sound.
I'm sorry, you say what?
There's no sound.
Perhaps
This-
there is no sound.
Yeah.
The video is what I want you to see, yeah. It just shows you and more vividly the separation of the interstage on the Saturn. And this is the item that took place on Martin Luther King's birthday. Or I'm sorry, the day he was assassinated. April the 4th, 1968.
Did you have the duty of actually mounting that camera?
Yes, I took me a year or more to develop all the details to mount the camera in the second stage of the Apollo such that it would endure the environment and not interfere with any of the flight hardware.
Was this the first flight? I mean, this was Apollo 11, so that was
No, actually this took place on Apollo 6, and it had 4. Apollo 11 actually didn't have this, but because of the nature of this film, since that time, it's been given credit to Apollo 11. It did not occur on that flight. It was one of the preceding things that we had to prove we could do before we could authorize man to go on the vehicle, which resulted in Apollo 11.
But so this system was used thereafter then? Your system was used thereafter for those flights following the first ones?
No, this system was used only to verify that the separation system worked. Once they had faith in the analysis plus this video, they no longer needed to monitor this particular thing.
Okay.
So this was essentially a one-shot deal. It occurred on 2 flights.
Okay.
But once it was proven, their confidence was 100%. Back in the day, they didn't really appreciate computers as much, so they wanted visual confirmation. Once they got it, they were satisfied.
Oh, so the ones that they show us then are not the actual later flights there, because I've seen these cut shots before, stage separation.
There's the separation, yeah. That proved the separation as the interstage went away, and the Earth's curvature was a very profound part of that phenomenon, which was a part of that age-old argument whether the Earth was flat or not. We had not gone that high to see that. Since that time, we go that high and see it on a regular basis.
So for the later flights, then, like say from 11 on, somehow they show you this clip somewhere in there. It may be this particular one, but it seems like they're showing you a clip of the actual flight. But you said that there were no.
That's right. They did put it in as though it was actual, but that wasn't true. That's a literary license. They put that in there. It has occurred. Like I say, on the day Martin Luther King was assassinated was when it occurred, which was a year before the actual Apollo 11.
Yes.
But it became iconic, so they used it all over the place in movies and everything, and that's what I became known for.
Shelby, you are an inspiration. I was born in '68, and I have to say, I'm a space geek because of this stuff. So
Is that right?
That's right.
Well, I envy you, because when I was growing up, I didn't have the visibility of the reality of these things. It was still Buck Rogers to us.
It's really cool, honestly, because I mean, our next frontier is Mars now, so just watching all this stuff is sort of drove me on that path too. So
Yes. So when you're done with this, I'll give you a little sketch of my tie with Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement.
Yes, go ahead. Yes, we have also more time with you in the panel session. So
Okay.
from now to around 10:40, That's your time. You'll share whatever you like to share.
Okay, well, now I'll just go through a tie because it was very important to me. My career, my 40-year career from the mid 50s to 96, it paralleled civil rights. And in some ways it preceded. I was working at Rocketdyne on the engine designing from the mid 50s in parallel with the Montgomery bus boycott. And by 1965, I was personally involved in taking a vacation. The same year I completed this design, I went to Atlanta, Georgia, and Macon, Georgia, for a couple of weeks of vacation to be involved with a team of people that were setting up the voter registration for that summer, that famous summer of voter registration. I participated in that personally. I have a couple of things I want to relate about that, the uniqueness of that. But the next thing I wanted to parallel was to reiterate the fact that not only was I involved directly in civil rights with Martin Luther King and his group in 65, when this actual film was taken was on the same day that Martin Luther King was assassinated. And the flight itself, Apollo 6, April the 4th, 1968, was completely overshadowed with the television coverage of the assassination. And going forward from there, the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, I mentioned that I have a display in the museum that you see. And at that time, as all prior, I literally could not live in Downey, although I worked on the space program. And I allude to the fact that the space program was significantly ahead of our social progress. I was doing things on the Apollo program that Blacks had not done before. And I look back and see that the country had learned a lesson from the Olympics of 1948, 52, I think, and 56, where we were competing against the Russians. And in order to put our best team forward, the composition of our team included Blacks and women, and we beat the Russians 3 times in a row in the Olympics. So when it came to the space race with the Russians, apparently NASA and the government wanted to put its best team forward. So that's why I got an opportunity to get into aerospace before civil rights highlighted in the mid 60s. And that was very important to me because over my entire career, the presumption was that I came after civil rights, which would have been in the 60s and 70s, and some of my former coworkers did start it during that time frame. But it was very important to me to recognize that the country, when given a common foe, was able to rally with a degree of diversity heretofore unknown in this country. And so that's the significance of my tie. And as I learned from some of the things that Martin Luther King, Dr. King espoused about his passive approach rather than violence, and he had a lot of difficulty holding off those people who wanted to support him, but they I guess they justified being violent, and there was always a division there where he prevailed that passive resistance was the best way to do it. And I found the same thing in my aerospace career. Many of my engineering Black friends were very hostile and angry, and it did not serve them well. By virtue of the fact that I was able to be more passive, I approached with finesse rather than brute force. And I accrue that to Martin Luther King and his legacy. And that's the bottom line secret to my success over many of my peers, Black and white. I owe that to that all legacy of being passive rather than trying to force people to accept you. Allow them the opportunity to come to get to know you and decide that you are acceptable. That's about the extent of the overview. I'll wait for the question and answer session, and perhaps we have some more responses for you.
Okay, so actually we have 10 more minutes before Pastor Ivy give his talk. So is there any question you want to ask or mention or relate? If not, we'll ask Pastor Ivy to start earlier.
I can give a couple of examples of
Okay.
of what, when we went to Georgia in '65 to set up the voter registration for that summer. And I always remember that Dr. King recognized the importance of including young white college students because they're being able to support and implement the program. They were less at risk than blacks to the South. So that program for that summer was dominated by white college kids from the North and from the West. And as I was teamed with a group of kids from UCLA, when I say kids, I was 30 at the time, and these college students were more like 20. And as we spent the weekend in Macon, Georgia, setting things up, I remember a couple of incidents that reminded me of how things were. One was on one occasion we went to lunch, and we sat together. There was, I think, I was the only black with about 8 or 9 whites as they split the group. We sat in a restaurant that had now been said to be integrated, and we were told that their definition of integration did not include mixed company. In other words, if I had come in with a group of blacks, I could have sat over in the corner, but they didn't want me to sit there with a group of whites. So we had to have a session among ourselves so that we didn't create problems in terms of how we interpreted integration compared to what how they viewed it in Macon, Georgia. The second thing I remember from that week was we were planning to have an evening a session of meetings among our group, and we lived with and houses provided by blacks. We lived in their homes with them, and we decided to stop by an ice cream parlor to pick up a gallon of ice cream to kind of entertain ourselves and have snack afterwards. And as we did that, we went into the shop, and they were looking at all the different kinds of ice cream and the drinks they had, and we began to ask each other what the various flavors of ice cream and things tasted like. And being from California, at least one of them licked on my ice cream to see how it tasted. And the clerk behind the counter, she went berserk because she had never seen, she had heard about how blacks might behave in a situation out west, but now she has seen that we were close enough that we literally shared an ice cream cone. So we had to have another security meeting when we got back to say, we're not here to irritate people. We're here to register voters. So we need to conform more to what their expectations are and acknowledge the fact that what we saw as civil rights of integration, the fact that they would eat off my cone or sip out of my drink, was not something we needed to do. And that kind of thing was very unique for us because being from California, we had experienced a lot more freedom of interaction, associations than in the South. So we had to adjust to back off of our camaraderie to a point of trying to avoid irritating the people that we encountered during that process. So that was a very unique experience for us to come across country and adjust as we pursued civil rights by getting the great number of people that we did to register to vote that year. So that's one of the things I wanted to point out that was unique. And it was the preceding session for the week prior, we had orientation meetings in Atlanta. And I remember distinctly that Martin Luther King was admonishing people to not overexpose or overindulge our version of integration in the process of trying to set this up. And that was one of the things that holding off those people who were more adamant about we can do whatever we want to do, we're free. So I remember that very well in 1965. And that is one of the things that stayed with me all my career, was to remember that I should always stay within the limits, not exceed to the point where you irritate somebody that you're trying to get to conform or to comply or to respond to you. So if you irritate them, their response is less likely than if you allow them to be, to some degree, comfortable, even though it's an uncomfortable subject. So that's what I wanted to share about my Dr. King experience.
Yeah, this is fantastic. This is really amazing and very inspiring. Yeah, we'll have more time in the panel session. So I think that Pastor Ivy has a little bit more time. So maybe because Michelle is here with us, so if that we can get the program maybe a little bit earlier.
Very good.
Okay, so just stay there. We'll have more time with you.
Okay.
So Pastor Ivy, so now we'll stay with you for the next 15 minutes. So Pastor Martin Ivy is a 70-year resident of Las Vegas, Nevada, and is a pastor of the Kingship Community Church. Pastor Ivy is an ordained elder through the largest African American Pentecostal organization in the world, the Church of God in Christ. Pastor Ivy holds a bachelor degree in mass communication studies and a master degrees in organizational leadership with concentration in civic engagement. He is currently pursuing his doctoral degree in theological studies from Faith International University. Pastor Ivy sits on numerous government and educational boards, to include his favorite, Nevada State College School of Education. He is a veteran of the U.S. Air Force, having served in the first Gulf War during Desert Shield and the Desert Storm. Pastor Ivy held the rank of senior airman and was a logistics and a public affairs specialist while serving as an honor guard. So it's our great honor, pleasure. Pastor Ivy, is yours. You are muted.
I apologize. Thank you so much for this great opportunity. I'm honored to be here. I keep looking at that. My secretary sent that in, and I'm trying to make sure that's still me that you were talking about.
I need
it. So I don't ever look at myself in that way. I look at myself as a young man who has grown up. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Missouri. So Missouri was the last state to succeed and get out of the war, the Civil War. I was, raised up in areas where it was tough to be an African American. And that wasn't because we were poor. It was because of the color of our skin. So I am honored to be here to share my experiences. I'm honored to see other African American men here. Definitely honored to see Dr. Jacobs. I'm gonna call him a doctor. I know he has an honorary doctor somewhere in there, and all his accolades he has one. So I'm gonna give him one now. Mr. Cook, thank you for being here. We are just so happy to have been asked to be here. My experience from Dr. King is as a young man. I'm 49. I'll be 50 next year, and there'll be a big explosion in Las Vegas. And when see it in December, you'll know that was my birthday weekend because we'll have fireworks throughout the city. And I just definitely, Dr. King is the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And it is part of my job to remind folks that, as Mr. Jacobs has said, Dr. King's position on nonviolence comes from the Word of God, and it comes from others he has followed previously. So I'm not here to preach, but I am here to remind that Dr. King is the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and his first love is the Word of God and God itself that perpetuated him to push to the level of where we're at today. So I'm honored to follow the footsteps of my fellow clergymen to do what I am doing in Las Vegas, to do what I'm doing in the state of Nevada. Is just mind blowing at times for me. So to give you a little background, I wasn't born in 1933, but I was born in 1971, 3 years after that picture was taken. So, Mr. Jacobs, thank you so much to remind me how old I am and what you've done. I feel so young at this time that I haven't done. But it is a great reminder that between Mr. Jacobs and myself as Mr. Cook and other African-American men and women who have paved the way for me. So my love came from pictures like that, things like Star Trek, things that said space, things that said air. And in the third grade, I was drawing planes, from the side, and we would, compete who had the best Air Force plane. And I love the Air Force. There's every movie that came out, every TV show, the $6 Million Man was a colonel, Buck Rogers was a captain, everything about space I loved. And if it wasn't for my genetics, and I blame my mother to this day, of my blinded eyes, I could not fly a plane, and I really, really wanted to fly. And so I was one of those, as you, Mr. Jacobs, who was told because you can't see well, then there's nothing else for you. And I did not take your particular position, sir. I was very disappointed and very hurt by those words. But what I did try to pursue is keep my faith, true blinded faith, TBF, true blinded faith. That is universal to understand the fortitude one has in yourself to believe in yourself. It comes in stages. It does not happen overnight. When you are full-eyed and skinny and not as good looking as the rest of you all, me had to figure out how do I overcome my personal challenges in order to become a public success. You have to overcome personal challenges and private wars in order to become a public success. And so when I started to figure out, now let me back up because I'm not an angel. I was angry. I was upset because I was denied things that I knew I had a right to. My parents taught me, being one of the first African-American families to live in a place called Blue Springs, Missouri. Yes, it sounds as white as it does the name. There were 5 African-American families in a town of 3,000. I'll say it again, 5 African-American families in a town of 3,000. Of the 5, 3 were professional athletes that played for the Kansas City Royals and the Kansas City Chiefs. They thought my father played for the Royals. No, my father worked at AT&T and he was a success. So I say that to tell you that I was taught early in the 70s, you can do what you want. Watch how we do it. This is my parents. And like Mr. Jacobs says, sometimes it's good not to say anything. And my parents taught me sometimes don't say anything. But my mother, Dr. Barbara L. Ivy, said, if you come after my kids, I'm going to come after you. So don't mess with my kids while I'm here. So you have to love, you have to defend, you have to stand up for what is right, even in the face of danger. That I believe, as a faith leader, God rewards those who are true to the faith of believing and doing what's right. And here we are today, backing a man and celebrating others like Mr. Jacobs, as we should Mr. Cook and others, African-American men and women, people of color, period, that have overcome challenges in the industry that you all are in. I admire you all because you have an aptitude I wish I could have. I wish I could be smart in math, and I wish I could be smart in sciences. I got C's, and I struggle just to get those. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful that you all have laid the foundation for the young men and women behind me, for my kids and my grandchildren who are in the STEM programs today. I work with a great young lady by the name of Stacy Wise, who's the president of the YWCA of Nevada. She is heading the STEM program in Las Vegas, especially to make sure young people, especially girls, black and brown, are able to Mr. Jacobs, you might want to put a mute.
No, I think you do.
Mr. Jacobs, you might want to hit that mute button. I don't want to be in y'all's argument.
Okay.
Okay, love you. But we're trying to do what we can to keep it going, to push the STEM program, to make sure kids are tested, that they, number one, know where these kids are at, that we identify them, to making sure they have educational opportunities to get in the sciences and math programs of our colleges and universities across this country and even across the world. So it's important that your work and this organization keep going. It is vital that you all do this, because I'm not smart enough to do it. I can only open up doors, but associations like yours and the relationship that we hopefully develop today and further with people like Mr. Chan and Santosh Kumar, which we hope to see soon, and others, that we can open up doors and keep the doors going to make sure that people see what they want to be. That is why I'm here today, is to talk about seeing what you want to be. And I wanted to not only talk about that, but commend you all for being the examples that people don't see all the time. But I wanted to come on and personally thank you for what you're doing in projects when it comes to missiles, planes, the defense system, engineers, scientists, mathematicians. You all are hidden figures to the public, and I wanted to come on and say thank you for allowing me to be here to see your faces, to tell you to your face, you are an inspiration. Every time a SpaceX or anything goes up, a ship goes up into space, I say a prayer, because there are chances that it might not come down. But I also celebrate that it went up. And we must always celebrate what goes up, because that is the success that we all want to have for ourselves, for our children, for our loved ones, for any person we know. We want to make sure there is success. Dr. King said it best, and I'm going to leave it at this. He said, almost always, the creative, dedicated minority has made the world better. And it is minorities across the board. It is a melting pot of cultures as well as minds that make any project a success. I'm proud of you. I'm happy to be here. So let's go forward and make sure we have a great, robust conversation when it comes to race, when it comes to relationship, when it comes to understanding each other, as well as the diversity of minds and positions to be a success, not only for this country and for your professional organization, but for yourselves personally. God bless you and thank you.
Amen.
Yeah, this is amazing. Very well said.
May I have a comment here? This to the pastor. Part of my background is happens to be the Church of God in Christ. My father was a pastor back in the 40s, early 50s, and they were very strict. And in fact, they believed that everything but reading the Bible and going to church was a sin. So there were very few things we were allowed to do.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, my dad and mom were not able to enthusiastically encourage me because they had no, even though they were people of faith, they had no evidence.
Right.
In their minds, the Jackie Robinson phenomenon occurred in baseball or athletics, but science and other fields, the doors were still not open, and so they were very cautiously optimistic along with myself. I didn't develop an extreme enthusiasm about it can be done until I was in the midst of doing it. And I wish they could be here now to witness where we are with the idea of all the exposure we've had, in spite of the chaos, political and otherwise. I still see promise that we're going to fare well. We're going to continue to move forward. We're not going back. At least I'm not going back. I have a one-way ticket forward.
That's right. Absolutely. Our faith sometimes needs to be, well, let me say it like this. Faith has to be boosted by courage.
That's right. My faith in God is blind, but my faith in man has to have some evidence. And one of the footnotes I wanted to make was the church that my father pastor was in Val Verde, which I've shared with people, was known as the Black Palm Springs.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the famous singer that passed away, he was there. I can't think of his name now.
Val Verde, Georgia.
No, Val Verde, California.
Oh, California.
Santa Clarita, California, just 40 miles north of Los Angeles. Was a little town of Val Verde, was all black. And many of my schoolmates thought that we chose to be in Val Verde because that's where we wanted to be among ourselves. I spent 70 years explaining to them that we did not have a choice.
Yeah.
This day, some of my former schoolmates are still naive to the point where they think that we chose to live in Val Verde compared to all the other places around there. In fact, that's part of my legacy, is that I was never able to live in the city that I worked in for my entire 40-year career. I always had to live in the hood and drive to work. Well, now the good news is that people who work there now can actually live right in the community. And that tends to be more true around the country than ever. So I'm still optimistic that we're making progress.
It takes so much courage to change, whether you are a Buddhist, whether you are Baptist, whether you are Catholic. It takes so much courage to reach beyond the biblical strongholds that cultures have in order to achieve personal and mental and spiritual growth.
Amen.
All of us have the ability to do better and be better but there are shackles of lineage that hold us back. And only when you reach an inner fortitude that you can unshackle those chains and reach forward in the things of your destiny. Destiny is what you put together, not because of the universe, in my opinion, but because of what you like and what you do best.
Yes.
You are talented for, and what you do best is your destiny. And when you put those two things together, you now flourish and become the best at it. You may not have all the accolades as a Shelby Jacobs. You may not be featured everywhere, but you have to have true self understanding that I don't need to be in the San Diego Tribune to know that I've contributed to this world,
That's
that I have
right.
made it a better place. I celebrate Mr. Jacobs, and I celebrate any person that is out front and doing well and making a difference. But I celebrate people like my father, who was the first African American trainer when it broke from AT&T into Southwestern Bell and all the bells regionally. He was the first of a 5-state system that became a trainer. That's not in any history book. That's
Right.
not sitting in a newspaper. You have similar stories that
Right.
tell a tale that say someone that looks like me made a difference and it didn't make the evening news. And it's okay.
It's
You
okay.
just know to tell your history and make it your history. And that's what's most important. In the African American culture, stories have been told. In the Norse culture, of the Vikings, stories were told. In the Chinese culture, stories were told. In the Japanese culture, stories were told that now we think sometimes a fable. I don't sometimes believe that. My grandfather stretched it because he told me he caught a fish this big. But I was more happy that he caught the fish. And that's what's most important is that we share the stories of our success, of our love, and culture that we come from, which makes each eye different and makes again, the same thing I'll say, that makes the projects better. We can agree to disagree,
Amen.
but we must do it in kindness and love and respect for
Don't have to be disagreeable.
someone else. That is the what Dr. King had pushed. He wanted social change. He wanted economic change. He did not want to see camps of internment for folks after war and during World War II of the Japanese culture. That wasn't right. He did not like what battalions where people were talking about Irishmen during the 30s and 40s. That wasn't right. What's right is people need jobs, they need opportunities, and societies and associations like yours are the key elements in opening up doors for jobs to change the lives of young people who are in the STEM program and need the opportunity to be heard. Without you, we cannot grow.
Point of information that I like to empower young generations to recognize that self-esteem is not a democratic process. One needs to develop your own self-confidence and self-esteem. That is something that only you do not rely on other people to determine that you're okay. You must do it for yourself. They will come around. Process.
Absolutely. Listen, I know that I'm not the next speaker, and I believe that Michelle Evans is here.
Uh,
And
That's Ivy. Actually, now we start the panel session.
we started now.
Yeah, so you are the moderator. So since you and Shelby already talked, so could you help have the other ones have brief introduction for themselves? Then we will have Michelle have more time because she has to leave before noon. So we need to give her more time. But before that, how about everyone else give us a brief introduction for themselves? Yeah, go ahead, Pastor Ivy.
Doug, again, you all know my background, but I want to hear from Doug. Doug looks like he's at Cape Canaveral, and I don't know what he's working on. So I want to hear from Doug. Please introduce yourself. You seem like the smartest man on here. I want to hear from you.
Man.
Hi, I'm Dougie Kemi, and I wish I'd had somebody like Mr. Jacobs to mentor me back in my early days, and maybe I wouldn't have said some of the things I did back then. But, I left the corporate world about 4 years ago after 39 years of experience, mainly in the space business. At one time back in the 90s, as the last man standing, I was the president of the Hughes Asian Pacific Professional Association, and worked together with other affinity organizations back at that time. And I have to admit, even though I long ago I did visit the Martin Luther King's tomb in Atlanta, I didn't quite appreciate what I was seeing then. It took me many years to wrap my understanding around the work he did in the civil rights movement, you know, visiting parts of the Civil Rights Trail. And I have to say the biggest impression was at Little Rock when I saw the videos of the students trying to get into the university there, and it gave me a better understanding of, you know, what the situation was like, the pure raw hatred, and gave me a better appreciation. And as an Asian American, you know, subconsciously, I guess I understood it, but it took me a while to understand that we benefited, you know, we rode the coattails of Dr. King and the civil rights movement, and a lot of what's been enabled for us was made possible by him.
That's awesome, and I do not want to overlook your experience. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna try to read this in my voice. If I say it wrong, Ikemi.
Ikemi. I don't say it right myself.
You silly. That was Ikemi, 39 years experience in the aerospace industry as a designer, analyzing, testing spacecraft thermal control systems and unit levels. His education is a BS in engineering, Harvard Mudd College, MS in mechanical engineering, California Institute of Technology, Hughes Master's Fellow, Engineer's Degree, California Institute of Technology, Hughes Fellow. I mean, I just get so honored that people like you are here. So thank you for being here. Just outstanding. Again,
I am honored to be here in the presence of you people.
Thank you. The Honorable Dr. Victor L. Cook.
I was a doctor already. I know I'm out of a degree.
It's coming. Don't worry about it.
Okay. When I share my screen, it'll be easy to get to read my resume. If that's what you need.
Where's his resume?
I have it on. Can I share my screen?
Hopefully. Michelle, you're gonna go last because you the best of all of us.
Oh, we'll see.
Can you see it now, or?
Oh, look at that. Wonderful. Yeah, we see it.
All right, so this is just the overview. My interest in aerospace and aviation started out way back as a kid, and I was inspired because I started out in an area where it was military airspace down in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
So we did prop testing, flying F-86, nearby bases, training missions, creating sonic booms and whatnot. So this sort of started all that. This is short, but in relation to Dr. Martin Luther King, up in those years, Dr. Martin Luther King was an inspiration, but he did open pathways as far as going into some of these areas here. This starts out maybe in '86, so this is a little later. But up until that point, I was in, I had joined the Air Force too. I don't have that in here. I was in the Air Force from 1973 to 1981. That's not a part of his resume. and I was their aircraft maintenance technician. So I've been involved with most of the hands-on ground working on the aviation industry. And I was a C-130 maintenance technician in the Air Force, dedicated flying crew chief and all. And flew just about everywhere over the world in that C-130, performing maintenance while crews were doing other duties, and I was on the airplane stuck with it. And so that was after high school. I was an Air Force ROTC cadet, so that sort of gave me enough on, what I needed to do in the Air Force, all Air Force oriented. But after I got in the Air Force in '81, I sort of messed around with school a little bit, and then I got a job with Rockwell International. After I went overseas to Saudi Arabia, Lockheed Martin. I was Lockheed at that time, and done a little work in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And I came back and started here at, but it's not Rockwell, it was Rockwell International from Palmdale area, Plant 42. And so they billed me as an inspector at that point. I had always been a technician, but they needed an inspector for quality and all that, so I agreed to do so. And the space shuttle program was right next door during that period of time. And also that space shuttle was out front there. And also during that time, Northrop Grumman was in the development stages of the B2 bomber. And it was all located on that big, large block of Plant 42 there, you said Palmdale. And so these are some of the things I've done. Started out after the Air Force, and I sort of stayed in the Air Force. I stayed in the industry. I was doing good at what I was doing, so they pulled me right in. And some of the stuff we've done here. Went from Rockwell International, McDonnell Douglas down in Long Beach, California, where you see it's an old Mercedes-Benz plant. Now, Building 80 was we assembled most of the MD-10s, MD-11s, DC-9s, and MD-80s. Well, I should say MD-80s, MD-90s. Then it was in Boeing 717, which was the MD-95 at the time. And so I went through all the processes here, lead inspector for most of the almost some of the flight line functions. And that led over into the C-17, actually, because the C-17 hadn't been built yet when we started out. But during the process of those years going by, they erected over the corner in the Long Beach airport. And all of a sudden, it was almost the same time Boeing decided, it was competing. We were producing 737, they were producing 737, we were producing the MD-80, MD-90. And they had better capacity to produce that aircraft at a lower cost. And it carried the same, revenue, it would produce the same revenue passenger miles for each aircraft. So, and that was a big deal between, I think it was Phil Condit and I can't remember who the CEO was for McDonnell Douglas at that time, but it was a big deal. Well, you're going to be either competed out or you want to integrate. So that's how Boeing actually grew as large as it did, because we had at that time McDonnell Douglas was Long Beach commercial operation. We were spread all over between Long Beach, Utah to St. Louis. We had all space. We had a lot of space. Delta 4, 3 and 4 series, right? We had all that stuff. So, but yeah, it all became Boeing at that time. And then there was a little stint where I got a chance to get into the business aspects of building airplanes. So I became an estimator, pricing estimator, that same C-17 program. Actually, I went to a layoff and I was looking for a job, so I got this job right away. But my experience on building the aircraft and operating the aircraft in the Air Force up through that time assisted me in becoming an estimated pricing specialist C-17 program. And then I immediately after that, that took about 20, 21 years, and I went overseas for Boeing in Saudi Arabia, and I put 27 months in with the Royal Saudi Air Force, and we were there to basically assist the Royal Saudi Air Force in maintenance of their aircraft that they were acquiring through the foreign military sales system. So I've been an on the grounds guy, sort of on the grounds type guy. But after that, I had to become more versatile. I actually spread out, because here, this Boeing here in Saudi Arabia, I was aircraft maintenance in the aerospace industry. That I had to sort of spread my skills out, because during that time, it was a long wait between my coming on with Lockheed Martin and come get the job. So I decided to go overseas to Afghanistan, and that dealt with providing services to the military. As forward operating bases in the southern half, Helmand province, and the northern half, as far as Mazar-e Sharif, the northern border of Afghanistan. It was the Marines and Navy, all forces, special operations, and we basically provided them everything they needed to go out and fight the war. They didn't have to do anything but just fight. We done everything, including vehicle repair and all that stuff. And I was a quality manager there. I was in quality system management, quality control, quality assurance technician. And
I apologize. I want to interrupt you. I do apologize. I want to interrupt and ask you this one question. This is the second time you said inspector maintenance. Did you ever want to be an engineer or move higher?
Yeah, so I was an ROTC cadet in high school. I made cadet major, and I was looking at the Air Force Academy, but due to and it was actually would have been a pilot instead of engineer, but due to financial, I got they were only giving out at that time 2 scholarships. One was most outstanding cadet, an ROTC, and another one for a $22,000 scholarship to your choice of whichever. Back then, it was a little cheaper, so you couldn't get in with that money. To your choice of an education institution which you would be able to, say, join senior ROTC, become a second lieutenant, and pursue whatever you wanted within the Air Force, whatever career you wanted to become in the Air Force. Now, mine would have been pilot instead of engineer at all. But engineering is sort of like, I have sort of like the basic skills of engineering. They consider me an engineering technician at this point because I didn't go through the formal engineering courses like in aerospace engineering, for instance. That would have been the engineer that I would have chosen to be. But it just took more money for me to come up with because getting to engineering at that stage of my life in order to to have progressed from say 1973 up to now. So that's why I didn't go that route. And so I took the path of least resistance, so to speak. And I rolled back into it. Coming back after Afghanistan, I rolled back into some of the things. So I had to understand some of the basic fundamental things, and that's sort of like the groundwork of a lot of stuff in aviation. And a lot of it was aerospace too, because on the C-17 program, there was a lot of engineering work I had to do. So I had to understand engineering. I had to understand how to speak with engineers and the financial officers there also. But it was my background that allowed me, that assisted me in doing so. So engineering would have been a choice, but the pilot actually was the first choice. And actually, I just started. I'm starting my pilot's license pretty soon out here in Texas. Finish that off. I just want to get that done. So yeah, engineering would have been a great position. I been in aerospace engineering. That's described my background, aerospace engineering, but I didn't get the actual degrees in aerospace engineering. My degrees were mostly in, and I got these after I got out of the Air Force. So it was operations management, aerospace system safety here, and then my specializations are in aeronautics management and space studies. So I took those specializations for a master's degree, just because I had sort of like innate knowledge of those, and the math wasn't too difficult, so I went on and completed those. And so when I came back, I became a senior quality engineer for the special operations contract logistics services for Lockheed Martin. That was in 2015, and that was a 2-year test for it. That was in Warner Robins, Georgia. So we had to maintain the special operations force because they needed the aircraft right away. They didn't want to wait, so they paid us a couple of years to get those up to speed. Now this is where I'm located now. They changed the titles to auditors now because that's really what we do. But that was an engineer's position too here.
Well, I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only person who wanted to be a pilot on this panel. So thank you for that. I want you to hold tight because I got 2 special questions for you, having been a veteran Air Force as well. And I was at Shepherd Air Force Base at the Air Training Command ATC base, and we worked on several planes there. I'm going to talk to you about that, but I want to get to two people because I'm very much aware of Michelle's timeline, and I want to get her out of here by noon. So I'm going to go to the last two folks, but the better looking one of the last two. Kristen, I'm coming to you.
Oh, me?
How
Hi. Hi.
are you?
I'm great. I'm not into space. I'm not in aerospace or engineering, but I'm a scientist at the Buck Institute for Aging Research.
Wow, she earned her BS degree in biochemistry and molecular biology from UC Davis and her PhD in pharmacology from Cornell University. I'm about to be your alum. I'm about to get a certificate from Cornell. Dr. Kristen. And I'll
Thank
let
you.
you say your last thing because I don't want to mess it up. And your husband.
Oh, it's Pareja. My last name is Pareja, but my husband's name is Navarro.
Oh, that's
He's
wonderful. That's
yeah, he's yeah. So I just want to introduce myself, I guess.
yeah.
I came from the Philippines. I came here when I was 15 years old. I grew up in poverty, so I'm aware of the inequality with people that are from low income. So throughout my career, I've helped a lot. I tried to help a lot of students during undergrad and grad school. And now as a scientist at the Buck Institute, I am starting a mentoring program with low income students around the Bay Area. So that's really exciting for me.
Yeah.
And currently I'm studying Alzheimer's disease and looking into specifically in the neurodegeneration that is caused by the protein called tau. So very short introduction.
Thank you very much. I will offline you. We have a history of Alzheimer's in my family personally, and I want to see if I can get a case study done. My father has slight, but his sisters, three of them have it. One of them passed away last April from it. And it's very prevalent because their grandmother had it, and she, we didn't know what it was. You know, back then you just thought people were slow, or they were just,
Right.
stupidity. So it is really prevalent in our family. So I will talk to you offline about it.
Okay.
Thank you so much. The great doctor, the photographist, the man himself. Put your hands together for Alan Chan.
Well, let's see. Is Ken going to read this, or should I just read it?
I will read it. Alan Chan has worked in the visual effects industry for over 20 years, including work on Academy Award-winning projects such as James Cameron's The Titanic, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, my favorite, The Two Towers, and Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. An accomplished screenwriter and director as well, Alan indulges in passion for space by using cutting-edge game technology to visualize and explore the planets. Please put your hands together for my friend and yours, Mr. Alan Chan.
So I'm a terrible engineer. I just like what I see, and I just make it happen, and I can do it because it's all in the virtual world. So it's cool that you guys are doing the actual engineering stuff. We just make it look good for you guys. So it's pretty cool. But like I said to Shelby earlier, I have to say that it is a great inspiration to see all this stuff. And what I am doing these days is because of the groundwork that you guys have laid. You and Martin Luther King has set up all this stuff that I can, do what I do. I'm from Malaysia, and I came here to go to college, and I started doing this stuff. So, having worked on Academy Award winning movies, is part of that. It's not something that I thought that I would be doing, when I was growing up in Malaysia. So it's certainly, part of the process. So thank you.
You are quite welcome. I'm very much interested as we move into some panel things that we talk about how this relates. And let me ask you this question. How many people, men or women that look like you, do you see in Hollywood? And how does that make you feel?
So the interesting thing is, at least from my point of view, the industry is very diverse and very progressive. Partly because they just need smart people to do all the smart stuff, right? So and so I think at the company that I'm working at now, we're probably covering, I don't know, 60 or 70 countries, in the same team. So that's a large number of diversity and stuff. So I think it's a good example of how far we can progress and how well we can do diversifying and including everybody. So it's certainly a good step forward.
One last question before I get to Michelle.
Sure.
When did you who was the person that, because you seem unflappable, Mr. Chan seems unflappable. Who did you work with that you just became like, oh shoot, that's her or that's him right there? And did you go up to him and talk to him? Where you at?
I don't remember when it sort of happens. I think it's more like I was just too stupid to know that I couldn't do things, so I just went ahead and did it. Which is probably sometimes a good way to sort of get through it. Which is I assume that's kind of what Shelby would have done too, right? Just go ahead and do it, and you just let your life become the truth or become the inspiration for stuff, right? Just
Yes.
Yeah, go out and do it.
Yes, I had the good fortune of, from junior high school through high school, of working as one of a few among whites. So I was able to see myself that I could do anything equal to or better than they could. So that was one of my blessings in my experience, that my self-confidence was derived from doing what others did equal to or better for a long period of time before I even got into aerospace.
I think it goes back to what you're saying too, is that you have to have that self-esteem to really do it, right? So and I know when I was growing up as a teenager that it was like, I went through that same stuff as well, but eventually you pull out of it and then you do the stuff that you were meant to do. So
that's right. One of the other things you'll find from my era back, and I think you'll know by now I'm 85 years old, my entire life has been among very few people that look like me. The number was close to zero. And here we are in 2021. You're in an environment where there are not many that look like you. And turns out that is a key to success. You have to be out among those that are doing it. You can't stay at home with your sister and brother and do what they do or don't do.
Yes.
That's right. That's right. Again, it comes down to courage and faith, and whatever you put that order you put that in, you'll do it. And speaking of courage and faith, I want to bring in Michelle Evans. Please put her bio up so I can read it, hopefully in the best way. And Alan, I need a job as a voiceover. I'm telling you that now. Michelle Evans is the founder and president of March 25 Media, Mach 25 Media, www.mach25media.com, and is a writer, photographer, and communications specialist in aerospace. She has written the best-selling book, The X-15 Rocket Plane Flying the First Wings into Space, which was published by the University of Nebraska Press as part of their Outward Odyssey, People's History of Spaceflight series. Michelle's background in aerospace engineering includes serving in the United States Air Force, working on missile systems, and later in private industry, accomplishing environmental testing for systems used in airliners and spacecraft. Her current work with Mach 25 Media provides education and display services for astronauts appearances and other space-related events. I'm going to talk to you about that at government facilities, science centers, schools, and other venues across the country and overseas. Michelle is a distinguished lecturer with the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, and her book on the X-15 was a finalist for the Eugene M. Award for astronautical literature. Michelle received the Diverse Community Leader Award from Orange County Human Relations and was recognized as one of the 100 most influential people in Orange County. She has appeared in numerous publications, including Air and Space Smithsonian, and Astra, Orange County Register, Los Angeles Times, and New York Times. Michelle was also a technical consultant on the Neil Armstrong biopic, First Man. Please put a hand together for Michelle Adams.
Thank you, Pastor Ivy. Thank you, Ken, for inviting me today. It's really great to be here and to celebrate the day where we celebrate Martin Luther King. And oh yeah, it's hard to know where to begin. I mean, did you want to ask me questions, or you want me to just talk for a bit?
Well, yeah, I'm going to ask you some questions. Because we're going to hit this hard. We're going to be honest today. With all that you have accomplished, and that is a beautiful picture in the back. I'm trying to make sure I know what it is. You all know better than me. But with everything that you've accomplished, is it more personal for you in the change that you've gone through to be a leader in the LGBT community or in the aerospace community, or are they equal?
Good question. I think in a lot of ways I consider them equal. I have my work, it's like I have two sides to what I do. One is in the LGBT community. I'm the transgender coordinator for the PFLAG Speakers Bureau for Orange County, Long Beach, that area. And I have a support group called TG Rainbow that I've been running now for coming up on 11 years. But then, my background in aerospace and the Air Force, writing my book on the X-15. And so it all sort of dovetails together. But yeah, it's like, yeah, there are really two sides to pretty much everything that I do.
That is a challenge, because when we think of equality, we always denote to color, race, culture. But we have, as a society, both nationally and internationally, in my opinion, have gotten away from speaking to those who are of a transgender or the LGBT community as a whole, to cover it all, right, Michelle, to say all of that. Do you feel slighted that we do not talk about equality in the space program as we do in diversity when it comes to that community?
Well, absolutely. I think, the LGBT community is definitely not well represented within certainly things like the astronaut corps, just to name a major aspect of space. It's interesting that with my support group, a lot of members in our support group are actually associated with the aerospace industry. There's a lot of people who identify as transgender who also happen to work on airplanes or have served in the military and things of that aspect. I mean, I served in the Air Force for 8 years back in the 70s. And being trans in the military was not something anybody spoke about at the time. It was certainly something that I tried to hide from everybody else at the time. I wasn't able to transition until I was well in my 50s, long after I got out of the Air Force. And actually, after I even got out of the aerospace community, I was out on my own when I did transition, and I'm glad I didn't have to transition on the job, because the aerospace community is really bizarre in the fact that it's on the cutting edge of technology, on this idea of forward thinking, space flight exploration, all these kind of things that we do in aerospace. And yet it is also probably one of the most conservative communities you could possibly imagine. So it's a dichotomy that's sort of hard to wrap your head around. And so, yeah, I know, unfortunately, many of these people that I spoke of who had great difficulty trying to come out on the job, things of that nature, and other people who just simply won't come out on the job because they know what being in the aerospace community entails and how they would most likely be received. So, yeah, it's a weird thing to wrap your head around.
For the panel, is it, because what Michelle brings up is describing what I heard, and I try to actively listen, is discrimination on every level. We cannot even begin to discuss what we've experienced, because all of us experienced. Let's agree to that, right? Let me see your heads nod if you've experienced, discrimination on your job. But the challenge to overcome the moment of discrimination, how does it make you feel when you walk away from that moment? And I'll go to Kristen first, and I want to go to Victor Cook second.
Sorry, what was the question?
How do you overcome?
How do I overcome?
Moment? How do you feel about that moment when you've experienced it? You kept your cool, or you kept your somewhat dignity, because you didn't hit the person, they knocked out, and you're not in jail at this moment. So that tells me you kept your cool a little bit. How does it make you feel to accept it, and then what promotes you and pushes you to keep going, knowing that discrimination comes? And I'm gonna go in this order: Kristen first, Dr. Cook second, Michelle next. I know I want to hear more from you because I know you got a little bit of time, and then we'll go from there.
Well, for me, I just take everything. Like if I experience discrimination, like when I was in undergrad, I just accept everything, even through grad school. And I just like let it go, because I know that if I like fight back, then something will happen. Like I was afraid of retaliation or not being able to progress through my career. And I know my goal was to finish. And now that I'm done, I'd say that I'm more like outspoken about it. Like if I feel like I'm being not treated fairly. And that's why I now mentor a lot of students from the low income and minorities, because I want them to feel empowered, and I want them to feel that, to not be like me when I was younger and I didn't speak up when I knew that I was being discriminated. So yeah, that's my my opinion about that. I just want to like influence the younger generation to fight back when they're feeling discriminated against, and to speak up.
Okay, Mr. Cook, and I'm gonna give everybody, when I ask a question, you have 2 minutes to say what you need to say and come off. Now I'm gonna do like we do at church, Mr. Jacobs, Shelby Jacobs. I'm gonna pull your coattail if you go past 2 minutes. So let's go ahead and give your answer, and then we're gonna get to Santosh Kumar right after that.
Okay, I have actually experienced discrimination you speak of specifically.
Okay.
So I was in the Air Force. I was in the ROTC, that proud of that. So I was very experienced in what I'd done. I was a straight-A student mechanic, so I went right into that field. And so throughout that period of time, it was a constant discrimination. It was a light, discrimination across the board, of me being Black and in that position, and that experience and knowledge of the subject matter. And it was just hard for a lot of the white folks, the nationwide white folks, to accept that, because they was in there particularly to try to just get in front of me. You know what I mean? So,
right.
challenge. It was a challenge going through that, and the fact that I was a cadet, which was less than 10% of the guys that was in there, the Air Force anyway, that started out that early, had that type of experience. So as I went through the Air Force during those 8 years, I experienced it up to a point. It come to a tipping point where I actually run into the perpetrators that would actually execute on that. You know, otherwise they brought in big colonels and stuff that had nothing to do. They all got those together to agree to discriminatorily act discriminatorily against me, which caused me to leave the Air Force. Now I didn't lose much by leaving the Air Force because most of the things I bring in the Air Force, I was a contributor to the Air Force. You see, so the armed forces built about everyone in the United States is built into the military. So they don't have a separate military all by itself. So the United States, everybody contributes. So that was my contribution. So and today it's still there, but I was able to leave because I could take what I bring it and bring it back out, and then work within the aerospace industry outside of the Air Force. But yeah, I was specifically targeted because I was black, staff sergeant, smart, and I just wouldn't let them buy me because they were going slower than me, and I didn't want to go that slow. And I knew what I was doing. I was adapt to it. You know, I liked to do what I was doing. You know, it was just second nature. And
Right.
at that particular time in that year, maybe hopefully they've gotten over it and they found the way to get along with people of other color that may be not knowledgeable in those subject areas. You know, and I'm sure it's happening in the space too. And I didn't just see the black people too. It was also people of color. You know, the Spanish community, the Filipinos, everybody was there. And so in those sites, it was like for instance, it was just like walking into 1942 and 1981. You know, walking into that realm, but how they treated blacks in 1942 as far as the military goes. You know, you just had to prove yourself 110, 200% better than everybody else just to be somebody in there, and that's what I run into. So that was it. 2 days ago, I actually called the guy. I actually called the colonel that signed all the papers for my release out of the Air Force. They gave an honorable discharge and all that. I just had too much momentum for them to, do anything wrong, anything like that. But there was so much pressure placed on me. Well, I said, okay, well, I accepted the discharge and I left. But I called him 2 days ago, and I talked to him, and he's 87 years old, and I just wanted to remind him that things like that are never forgotten. You just never forget those types of things. And then I don't know how to strike him, but he was wordless. He couldn't say anything. He was just completely wordless. So that gave me gratitude that the fact that that let me know that he understood now what happened, and that I was still living and it was still resident. That I was one of the. It was like a flip of a coin. I was most likely to succeed, and didn't because of that. You see what I'm saying?
I do. And I agree. Smart, ambitious, intelligent. You were confident. Don't forget you was good looking back then too, and that made a difference as well. So let me get to Michelle Evans, and then I'm going to introduce Santosh Kumar as well. And I apologize as well. But with that same question, the experience that you had, how did you feel? And I know you hadn't transitioned yet, but how did you feel maybe listening, hearing a joke, and then you had to walk away before you punch somebody out? And you know how we were in the military back then, with telling crude jokes. How did you feel? How did you overcome and how did you push through?
Well, when I first went in the military, and even up until the last few years I was in the military, I expected to stay in as a career. I stayed in long enough to get my degree and was planning on going into the officer corps because I was enlisted, and I was going to make a career of it. I was looking at being a missile launch officer, things like that. But what happened in my specific case was it wasn't just listening to jokes and that sort of thing. It was the fact that I had two people who found out that I was transgender, and that changed everything, because those two people, of course, were yelling it to high heaven, so to speak, that what they had found about who I was. And the only thing that saved me at that time was the fact that nobody believed them because everybody knew that those two guys hated my guts. So, but it was also at that point, see, one of the problems was, they were telling everybody, it was this terrible rumor that went around. And of course, it went all the way to the top within the squadron commander, the first sergeant, everybody else. They couldn't do anything to me specifically because there was no proof of their allegations. But I was suddenly being treated much, much differently than I had been treated previously. And I knew that I needed to leave that area. I tried to transfer, and basically they wouldn't let me leave. They always would cite manpower shortages and things like that, so that I was unable to transfer away, so they could just continue to harass me. And the harassment got very, very difficult. And trying to cope with that was extremely hard on me. I mean, when these two guys first found out who I was and stuff, they literally attacked me. And trying to cope with that is something that I'm still dealing with today, more than 40 years later, because it was a horrendous situation. And so finally, I was able to get out of the military. There's a lot of other things that happened in between that I could talk about while I was still there, but needless to say, I knew that I needed to get out, and I thought I would be able to go back into hiding, so to speak. For myself, the thing that changed my life was the fact that I happened to meet this amazing lady about a year after I got out of the military, and we fell in love immediately. And for whatever bizarre reason there was, on that very first day that I met Cherie, I told her the deep, dark secret that I had never admitted openly to anybody else in my life. And even more bizarrely, she didn't run away, and she still hasn't run away. And that was more than 39 years ago. And so she is the one who saw the harm that was coming to me by hiding the fact that I was really female, trying to persuade other people I worked with and stuff that I was actually male. It wasn't working very well. She's the one who told me I needed to do something. And in the end, that's what I finally had to do. I'm tall, I'm big, I got this crappy voice that you hear today. And although Cherie would tell you it would sound really great at 3 a.m. on FM radio, but that's beside the point. But it was because of her that I started to transition, because I knew I could not do it. But I also got to the point where I knew if I didn't try, I was not going to stay alive. So her love and support got me through that process, and I came out the other side, and I feel so much more, I mean, just being myself is pretty amazing. And even though I now have more danger in my life, people want to hurt me just because I'm trans. I have been attacked on 5 different occasions. One of those attacks almost left me dead. And I will tell you that attack was by a doctor when I was under her care, which is even worse. I guess she forgot that whole thing about first do no harm. But it doesn't really matter, because I'm still finally happy. I'm able to do what I want to do. It was only after I fully transitioned that I was able to calm my mind enough that I was able to sit down and write my book. My book took 30 years of my life to see the light of day. And it wasn't until after I transitioned that I was able to actually get the writing done. And I am very, very happy that it didn't happen until after my transition. So if nothing else, my book has the right author's name on it. So that's always amazing. But, and it's really interesting too, because I actually had a backlash for a time from some of the people who I had been in contact with, that I'd done interviews with for my book. Again, talking about this extremely conservative aerospace community. You know, the X-15 rocket plane is the literal cutting edge at the time it was flying. Some of these people, after I came out, after the book was coming out, they literally were telling people that I never spoke to them, because they would never, ever in their wildest dreams talk to somebody who was transgender. And of course, they seem to forget about the fact, well, you know, I do have the tapes, so I can prove that I did indeed talk to them. But it's good, because in the end, it's been really well received. So many people that had rejected me before were able to finally come around and see the light of day, so to speak. And I don't have those kind of problems with the community that I used to have, which has been great. It's like when I go out to do a talk, again, you know, I'm tall, I'm big, all this stuff, and I come in to do my talk, and the X-15 is a very macho thing, as you can imagine. And people will look at me and it's like, who the heck is this person who's going to be giving the talk on this, you know, this aircraft and these people? And I never ever talk about being trans when I do my talks on the X-15. It's totally irrelevant. People may figure that out on their own. That's fine. But by the end of the talk, the nice thing about it is nobody is there asking why I'm there anymore, why I wrote this book. They just know this is my passion and they accept it. And I've never once had a problem because of my being transgender in that condition. As an AIAA distinguished lecturer, I've traveled all over the country, done a lot of talks down in the South and stuff, specifically where I had some fears because of who I am when I first started doing that. And yet I have been accepted every place I have gone, and that is pretty great. So if nothing else, I hope that over these years, and because of what I'm doing as an activist in the LGBT community, and just simply as an author traveling around talking about this aircraft and these people, that maybe people's attitudes about being transgender are catching, you know, they're changing. And it's really been wonderful to see some of that happen. So anyway, sorry, I went on too long there.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. What you pointed out was what Mr. Jacobs was trying to point out, what Dr. King was trying to point out. Let us judge the person by the content of their character. Let us judge them by the intelligence that they bring to the table and a subject matter that is important for the day. That is most important. Your lifestyle, my lifestyle, whether it be heterosexual, gay, or whatever, is irrelevant to jobs, is irrelevant to curing cancer, is irrelevant to filming a film, is irrelevant to inspecting an aircraft. All of it is irrelevant. What we bring is our perspective. And that's the most important, in my humble opinion, as an old man, that I believe that this is the most important. Let me introduce and apologize to Santosh Kumar. I did not know that the person was there because I didn't see a picture. So I apologize to this panelist publicly for not acknowledging you. Please bring the bio up so I can read it in my emphatic voice that I have been trained to do. Should I give the greatest introduction in the world?
No apologies required. I actually prefer to be stealth, so no worries there, sir.
Look at that. Santosh Kumar, Silver Airman, member of SCAUWG, Southern California Pilots Association and Long Beach Airport Association, former military air operations coordinator for Wings over Fullerton Airport, day at Fullerton Municipal Airport. Worked briefly at Boeing on the C-17 program, Unographic Solutions, now I never say that company because I don't like them. Oh, I'm sorry, what is now the NX and the Rayathon on AN/APG 73 and the AN/APG 79, AESA radar for the FA-18CF and volunteer engineer at NAVAR, which is NAVAR, Naval Air Systems Command, the NAWC Naval Air Warfare Center, and the TSD Training Systems Division on Micro Simulator Part Task Trainer. He is FAA certified pilot with 230 hours of high performance endorsements and aerobautics flight time. This is probably, of all of us combined, the smartest person in the room, Mr. Santosh Kumar.
Thank you. You're too kind. I would actually present to you that the reason I'm a pilot was because I was not smart enough to succeed as an engineering student. So this was the next best thing that I could do. I'm actually the dumbest person in the room, to truth be told. But I'm glad and honored to be among you all. Kent, do you have that YouTube clip link that I sent you?
Yes. Okay.
Can you
I'll put it
please
up.
play that?
Okay, give me 1 second.
Because there's a certain aspect, you may need to fast forward by tapping the right side of the video until we get to when I start showing the building, because there's an important point that I wanted to make.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Sure.
And Santosh, when you get done with the video, do that. Michelle, can I give you 2 minutes before noon to make any last statements or anything you want to say before you go? I know you are VIP and the plane is waiting on you as soon as we get done.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. It's been great to be here, and I appreciate the allowing me to jump in, and then I have to leave. Yeah, this is just such a great group of people. I did want to throw in one of my favorite quotes from Martin Luther King. I don't think anybody mentioned it here today, so I'm going to put it in myself, which I think is relevant to my own experience and hopefully to others as well. Simply said, love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. So that is the be all and end all that I wish that everybody would live with.
Absolutely, 100%. Let me say this as you leave and tiptoe out the door onto your next assignment. As a pastor, as a representative of the Christian faith, whether we disagree or agree, we should always support. And even though I do not have the same belief as the LGBT community, I support your rights. Many others support our rights. Do not listen to the evangelicals that you see on TV and what the media does. Reach out to me and others like me, because we need to be in the same room in order to make change in this country. I say that to you, and I make sure that you get my number and information, that we support one another, that I always ask the question, I can support you, will you support me when I'm wearing my robe or wearing my collar? Because at the end of the day, it's a lot of people that hate us just because of who we are, regardless of
Amen. Comment briefly. I tell people all the time that love trumps hate, pun intended.
Yes.
Thank you, Michelle. Get out of here. Go to your next VIP event.
Right. Well, thank you, everybody, and you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for being here on a really great day, honoring a really wonderful person. So you all take care, and thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Kumar, where's that video?
All right, go ahead, fire it up. You may want to. Where'd it go?
I love saying his whole name.
I think Ken's in control. He's driving. I'm just the backseat driver here.
Can we start that over and unmute it at the bottom?
I'll expand it a little bit too.
Ken?
Yes. Yes.
Are you able to play the video because it's not showing up?
I see it.
Not showing up.
I see it.
Yeah.
Oh, you see it? Okay. Not seeing it. But in any case.
Yeah, we can see it. We can see it.
Okay. You can go ahead and shut it off once they show the building. But this is the General O. Davis Junior Barracks at the United States Military Academy at West Point, and it has the 13th Air Force symbol on it. And the reason why I wanted to bring this video up to kick off what I'm about to say was that this is something I would say presented to you about 50 years ago, would have been unheard of at a place such as the United States Military Academy at West Point, and shows how far we have come as a nation into recognizing people regardless of their background, to their contributions. And one thing I would like to say is that with Dr. Martin Luther King, he wasn't the first to bring about the awareness of equality. He merely inherited that task from giants on whose shoulders he rode on. And the Tuskegee Airmen in World War II were among those shoulders, and that relates directly to our profession in aerospace. And even before that, it was the Buffalo Soldiers and the 54th Regiment during the Civil War. So this is something that we got to realize, that Dr. King was as great as he was, and he is great, was simply one of many in a long line of people who advanced the cause of equality for all people. And one of the things that we got to keep in mind is that if you look at Benjamin O. Davis's history, he attended the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, and he was given what's known as the silent treatment. All 4 years, they did not say a word to him. They treated him in complete silence. He roomed alone, he ate alone, everything. But he was determined to not let him grind him down. And as a result, he actually earned the respect of his white peers by the time he graduated, which is truly remarkable. And what I would present to you about Dr. King is that his true message was race really should be irrelevant, nor should any other immutable characteristics. It should be content of your character. And that is truly a wonderful idea. And I think that's just something that we need to work towards moving forward. So when we have programs to uplift others through STEM programs or whatever, I would present to you that the best way to approach it is to not restrict it to minorities or people of color or any other immutable characteristics, but to anybody who is in need. And the reason why that is important is because if we only restrict it to people of a certain background, we run the risk of potentially causing an abrasive situation where we are no different than those who were causing discrimination to begin with. By being open to everybody and this helping everybody, we show our magnanimity and the true meaning of Dr. King's message of equality for all, regardless of your background. And furthermore, we have, like it or not, have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. And I'm proud to say that the people on this panel are all people who have done that, regardless of whatever injustices that may have done to them. You guys did not use that as an excuse to do the same back. Instead, you use it to drive yourselves even further and hold yourselves to a higher standard. And that is why everybody here is respected. And that is, I think, what we need to do moving forward. And that's really what I wanted to say, that we need to focus on a area where we celebrate our differences, but the most important difference is diversity of thought and opinion. And once we have that, race and other characteristics, whether you're minority or majority, is absolutely irrelevant. We can then focus on the task at hand, which in this organization is aerospace. But on the big picture, aerospace really is just one cog in a big wheel that serves humanity. And that's really what it's all about. We need to be serving humanity, not any one particular race or anything. And every race brings their certain attributes to the table. And when we all work together, we can actually do some great things. And that's pretty much all I had to say.
Santosh, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Is a great video. I have two cousins who graduated from that location at West Point. They are captains and majors of the United States Army. They went to West Point. They're very proud of them. In fact, let me brag a little further. Their sister is an associate, what do we call it? She's an attorney for the Biden presidency. She was just announced on Monday as an associate attorney there for the White House. So that their brothers and sisters, they're a great, great branch of our family. But I'm going to challenge you, Santosh, and I'm going to bring Doug into this one because I hear what you're saying, that Dr. King's saying, regardless, and where we should be today, or what we are today, or let me say it right, that we should not be looking at people's cultural aspects or the minority representation, but it should be open to all. Doug and Alan, do you agree with this sentiment, or is there a different variation saying that is a good idea, but there still maybe needs some help to make sure people get in? What are your thoughts? Doug first, 2 minutes. Alan second, 2 minutes. You on mute, Doug. You on mute. I know you in space. I know you on the International Space Station.
Sorry about that. Actually, I support equal opportunity. There's still room in the system because of the inbuilt biases where you can't judge people completely by merit, because when they say merit, they don't really mean it. The system still has a lot of issues, and I'm not sure I'm communicating things properly, but
you're doing fine. You're doing a great job.
You know, there's still a need for quotas in some places, and you know, there have to be assurances that there's equal representation of everyone. Merit's been used as an excuse to bleach out, if you will, some organizations, and you know, I know Asian Americans have benefited from, you know, they wouldn't have so many positions in the civil service if it weren't for enforcement of some quotas. The whole business of historically about being qualified has a lot of shadings to it.
Alan.
Yo, what do I think? I agree with Santosh. I think a lot of it, you know, always comes down to our own personal experiences in our own lives, right? That shapes how we how we decide on things. Yes, there is a lot of still, you know, inbuilt biases. But to me, it feels like this sort of stuff will take time to sort of ease out and solve. So the one thing that is most important to me is for everyone to understand what our inbuilt biases are. We did a great, at work, we did a great seminar one time that was sort of like identifying our what do you call this stuff, pre biases, like your implicit biases, right? So you could actually see, you know, things that you didn't realize that you had a bias and stuff like that. And that actually helped sort of, you know, show everybody how you would respond in the situation. I think if you did that more often, you know, you would sort of be able to highlight that stuff and try to switch it. But it does seem to me that if you, you know, just specifically targeted, you know, certain minorities for programs, that it's not really, you know, it really wouldn't be like a you know, a thing, because you kind of want the best of everything, right? The best of everyone. So I think it's, I mean, I basically agree with Santosh, is that you have to sort of keep it open for everyone. So.
Mr. Jacobs,
Yes.
before you go, before you start, because I know you can give me a dissertation. Before you start, 1950s to 2000s, you worked 40 years plus. Do you think or feel in your experiences that there is not enough, or we should have gotten rid of the governmental control to make sure minorities were hired in positions? Do you think that was the right thing to do? Or you just think, the heck with it, no, we just need to hire people based upon the testing skills and move forward?
Well, my experience was, as I worked in affirmative action and equal opportunity in parallel with my career, the quota system, et cetera. I think that it's necessary to have those things because some people are unwilling to comply. I remember literally at Downey, in part of my career, I was given an assignment by a vice principal because they didn't believe we had qualified engineers. I went into their own documents and proved to them by their own admission that they had it. So there's a certain denial there that quota systems will help fulfill. For example, this country has failed to live up to the true meaning of its creed, in that it does not acknowledge that one of the elements in our economic system was white privilege and cheap labor. If we don't address those, white privilege primarily and cheap labor, those are two ingredients that keep relegated women to this day, and minorities still make a fraction of what their male counterparts do for the same job. That is institutionalized racism, not written, but white privilege and cheap labor are something we need to address. We need to address true equality. I often say to people that the playing field might not be level, but it's not as steep as it used to be. We still have a ways to go to truly judge by the content of character, allow people to demonstrate their capability, not prejudge them based on gender or those kinds of things. And I happen to have worked a lot with LGBT people back in the day when they couldn't declare it. I have a lot of empathy for that because to my advantage, I could never deny being black. I do know I grew up in Val Verde with at least one family of mixed kids, some of whom could pass for white. And as long as whites didn't know you were black, you were okay. That same phenomenon applies to LGBT. And of course, in parallel with that, I worked with a lot of women who were deprived. I had the privilege of being the first black at the executive level, along with the first white female. And I remember in her case, one of the guys called, some engineer called up, and she answered the phone instead of her secretary, who had stepped out for some reason. And she was treated very crudely because he assumed she was a secretary because her voice was female. Bottom line, he got fired. And that sent a message back to people that they needed to be careful about who they talked to and how they treated people. And many of my experiences was a lot of people who had feelings differently, sometimes I was approached and people would try to convince me that I'm different. My discussion with them said, hey, you don't know enough blacks to determine that I'm different. I want you to count me in to change the average overall. If you see enough blacks that you think are different, maybe that'll change your opinion. But if they discount you by exception, they go on being racist.
Dr. Navarro, yeah, I see you've been nodding your head while you working on the cure for cancer. Have you experienced the affirmative action in favor? And as a woman, and looking like the only woman on the panel, that women are not being represented in the STEM program, in sciences, space program, and even women of color. Your thoughts?
If is the question is if the affirmative action is in favor of women?
Are you in favor of the
Oh,
affirmative action?
yes.
Has it benefited you? And do you need to put it away? But as the only woman here that's represented so far, that's I'm looking at right now, how do you feel about it all?
Well, for affirmative action, I feel like it's necessary, especially like I am aware of the differences in the the communities here in the Bay Area. There's a very big inequality within in the low income, in low income schools from the high income schools. There's a really big difference. And I feel really, I feel empathetic for students that are not getting the same resources as students from other communities that are wealthy. So that's why I'm very into like helping and reaching out. And as a woman, I am also, of course, in favor of affirmative action because I had my son while I was in grad school, and it definitely took some of my my productivity away, and I lost some of my authorship because I had a son. And I wish I had more help when I had my son in grad school, but I was pretty much given a choice to either quit and get my master's degree or start a new project or go on but just start a new project. So I definitely got some help, but in the end I wish I had more help to encourage me to continue, instead of when they saw me that I was pregnant, pretty much people thought that I was a failure and I should just give up with the PhD because it was going to be hard. So that's why I'm here. Yeah.
Well, you are definitely an inspiration. Dr. Cook, what do we do now to get more people of color, but at the same time to Santosh Kumar, I love saying his full name, Santosh Kumar's point, to make sure that we are being equal to everyone? What does that look like? And I know this is a broad question and a tough question because not everyone that are decision makers are on this call or at the table. But if you could tell them how you would like it to be run to make sure equality has been achieved, to get people, young people in, what does it look like to you?
Well, on the word of young people, especially young people, I see today that in order to ensure that equality is spread across the board, to all people, equality, it'll mostly have to be based upon that person, and of course that person will be representing their people. It's going to have to be based upon that person's innate desire to achieve what it is that they're going to want to achieve, their desire to do it, and their ability and willingness to go through it all, to get to where they got to go, irregardless of what color they are or what ethnic organization or group they come from, regardless of their differences, which you can't remove the differences anyway. So I see it as you have what you bring forward is what you're going to be bringing forward. Your culture, everything from the rear all the way forward. And if it's enough to get the job done without being discriminated. We can get to the process of saying, hey, this person's up here. He's doing 90%, 95% better than everybody else, although he may be 10% of the population. For instance, when I was in the Air Force, but even when I was in the Air Force, the ratio of black folks to white folks in there was about this representation of the United States is, then, it was like 10 to 10% out of the 100.
Right.
I run into a lot of people that allowed me to exercise. They can take examples from this. I run into a lot of guys that allowed me to exercise this. When I went in the Air Force, I was stationed, my first base was Dallas Air Force Base in Abilene, Texas.
Yeah.
Right, the guys there were in there, they were white guys, master sergeants, staff sergeant, they was my chiefs, my section bosses and everything, my supervisors. And they recognized the skills that I had. So it takes the recognition, the skills one brings to the table, the knowledge one brings to the table, to let them, and then they let me succeed in that. They let me go ahead and run it. They let me do it. If I should fail, then it was on me. It wasn't on them, but it was on me. But it's the ability to just give the opportunity to let you go forward with what you have, even though it's very competitive with the status quo, for instance. It's very competitive. But they allowed me to go ahead and do it anyway, because they saw it was an advantage to myself. They saw it was almost like a Tuskegee experiment, almost. We're gonna just, So I think that should be spread across the board, though, because I work with just about everybody on this panel here during my career, and it was their ability to actually exceed, the color was, it was like no color there, it was they removed all the color barriers. If you can remove the color barriers and that this person operate at their level, and then you'll see the true contributions. And we can truly contribute that way, as long as those blocks are out of the way. If you don't have to spend time, you don't have to spend a quarter of your life trying to figure out how to get through discriminatory measures that are placed against you, take a quarter of your life away, then you'll be able to succeed. And so it'll take people in those certain those certain hierarchies, or within your career path, to recognition. It takes recognition. It takes recognition of the being of the to allow them to go forward and exercise what they intend to do. Of course, it's going to be for the good will of everybody, but that's what it takes. It takes them to recognize, hey, this guy's a black guy, this guy's an Asian, this guy's Hispanic. What does he have? And they put it up on the table and say, well, you're doing better than little Johnny here from Kentucky. And so why should we let him underperform when you can overperform, and keep you out of the picture, because we want him to be better than you because he's a white one, you're black, although you're doing it. So it takes those people to recognize that and then put those and execute forward on that. And that it also takes a much more spread than just the aerospace industry too, because it's not just the aerospace industry that starts there. It starts nationwide. It starts in all the industries. It's built up into, you may end up in one industry yourself, but it's a makeup of the entire nation. So it takes that to be spread across the board on all industries and all areas, to be exercised. It has to be a practice. It has to be an exercise. It has to be an execution of the idea that you're going to judge this person on his content and his character, his knowledge and skills and abilities to go forward and to carry us forward. You might be the first black man to bust out in the margin, but you got to be something like that Rolls Royce figure. The Rolls Royce had the little figure on the front of the car.
That's right.
You got to be willing to take on that responsibility. You got to be and bust those doors. You got to be the guy they put out there in the front and pierce through. What it is that we're trying to achieve. If you got to go, if you're that guy and they choose that person, you got to be willing to accept the fact that if you're chosen to do that, you go through that. You got to be that willing person. You got to have the desire to do it, and then most importantly is that you got to have it has to be a system which allows you to be chosen for those positions, irregardless or irrespective of your ethnic background. And basically, that's what it boils down to, your ethnic background, because that's the main discriminatory factor across the board of all of it's the ethnic background, where you're from. You got people from BC to AD to now, and it's all been a difference in your ethnic backgrounds, and so and what you believe in.
I agree. I agree.
Right, so if that's put aside, and say if you put out there because you're the best one, just on that basis, you be the best one to do the job. Your color is gone. It's completely invisible. You're the glass man out there.
Agreed. Agreed. And I don't know if that was your phone, that may have been Joe Biden calling you for a position in his cabinet. I think that was your phone, Mr. Cook.
Yeah.
No, I'm teasing. I just thought that was Joe Biden calling you.
But I'm gonna say on young people though, because I got a niece now. She's young and she's interested in space. She's only 11 years old, and all of a sudden I want to build a universe. I want to go to space. I want to look out there. So I bought telescopes and all kinds of universe models and stuff to keep her interest there. Now it may be because she's a little model too. So, but I'm gonna. The interest is going to be where we start with our kids. If we see an interest in that particular field, we got to sort of like feed them what they need. Not much at a time, just feed them a little bit at a time to see if that's really what they want to do. You got to sort of experiment at that age too, and then watch it grow. And if it just snowballs, then okay, you're going in the right direction. But I wouldn't do it to where I wouldn't cut off any other alternatives that they might want to pursue. It may just it's just been inspiration for a second, but it's got to be something deep core. It's got to be something they really want to do, and if it is, then you pretty much succeed on the younger level going up. That's what has to really start on the bottom end, and it's got to go up through the social
ranks. Yeah, I agree. Sometimes he started this great conversation, so he's got his hand raised. Let's go to him, please, sir.
Couple of quick comments. I was reminded, somebody mentioned that we ride on the shoulders of people like the Tuskegee Airmen and the other organization, can't think of the name of it now, the Buffalo Soldiers.
Buffalo Soldiers, 54th.
Right. I've had a meeting people from each. I was just reminded today, most of them have passed away, but I was reminded today by one of my friends who lives here in San Diego County, whose father, Papa Robinson, is 101 years old, one of the Buffalo Soldiers. I plan to get in touch with him before the day is out to commend him for surviving as one of our original examples of people who persevered long before us and made examples of the things that we were able to demonstrate we could do in spite of the fact it was presumed we couldn't. The other comment I wanted to make was relative to the gender issue. I recall back to high school, my early education, in fact, all of my education, I related to the fact that women were represented in the school system fairly equally. 51% of the women this population was women. Yet when I look back and I see the honor society that I belonged to, it was 90% female. And the surprise I got a few years later when I got into the industry, I wondered what happened to all those smart women. They were secretarial, menial roles, all the higher positions were occupied by male Anglos. So I had a question in my mind early in that time frame, what happens to being smart? Without an opportunity, being smart is wasted.
Right.
So that's why when I say opportunity and we go to equal opportunity and so forth, I think it's still imperative that we monitor those things and make sure we allow representation that tends to balance out to our representation. Women is a good example of their representation being significantly low, as are other minorities groups and LGBT. So that's one of the reasons why I still believe we need monitoring. We need not ignore that and just declare everything equal, even though you have like 100-yard race. All of a sudden to declare it equal, and I'm 50 yards behind to start with. Well, that declaration is not enough to do it. We have to do more work to create equality from which to balance out things.
With that said, Santas Kuma.
Yes, sir. Thank you for all your points of view. They're all very important and valid. A couple things I forgot to mention were me being of Indian background. I'm going to say that, and I'm sorry if I offend others by saying this, but I personally believe that the racists or whatever here in the United States are amateurs because being Indian with the caste system going back thousands of years,
That's
they got
right.
it down to us. And the reason why I bring that up is that it's really not so much about race or anything. It's really more about a good and old girl boys club. And even if you have like a single race, people will find a way of forming their own cliques and discriminating even within the same race. It's just a human nature to do so.
That's true.
So that's something where race is just one of many things that people happen to pick, discriminate against. If it weren't for that, it would be something else. That's just the nature of the beast. That being said,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I apologize.
as it relates to meritocracy and versus affirmative action, so yes, the Tuskegee Airmen were created in kind of an affirmative action type role. But if you look at how General Davis ran the Airmen, he ran it as an absolute meritocracy within that group, and that's the reason why they succeeded as well as they did. If he had allowed cliques to form and hookups to be the result of people rising to the top as to who got fighter slots or whatever, they would have failed, and people would have pointed to them as just another failure. And so that's just something to keep in mind. And the other thing one of the saddest things that I have seen, this is what we got to be very careful when it comes to relates to affirmative action, is that people who are very well qualified, busted their tail to get to where they are, only to be cut down saying that, oh, he just got in because of quotas or affirmative action.
Yep.
That is the saddest thing that I've ever seen. And
Understand.
that's the reason why we got to be very, very careful as to how much we push the whole quota and affirmative action thing, because it can backfire in a very bad way. And I would present to you that the goal of some of the racists out there is to push affirmative action in order to use that as a cudgel to say, see, look, these people can only make it if they have special quotas, and without it, they can't do it. Whereas if you get rid of that, and those who do succeed, granted, it's a little bit harder, and life is unfair, I will agree. There is no room for them to be able to make that ridiculous argument. And some examples is one of my friends, he's a white Air Force colonel, very good guy. He was telling me that he can't believe all the idiots who are saying that the current chief of staff of the United States Air Force, CQ, General CQ Charles Q. Brown, got to where he is because he's black. That was an utter bunch of BS, because every white officer who knew him knew that he was stellar. Yet people are starting to claim that, oh, he only got there because he's black, which is nonsense. That's what I'm afraid of. That's where I come from. Is that we got to make sure that we don't undermine ourselves in the name of equality, because everything that we do is under the microscope. It can result in us it backfiring on us.
Hold on, Mr. Jacob. Hold on, Mr. Jacob.
I've had 70 years and I still get that. My achievement is because I'm black, because being black is a benefit, or somehow they give you a 50-point bonus, and that therefore you're not as good as you are. I've had that all my life, so that's part of the burden we have to bear, even as at the top level, vice president. You've heard that and heard other people. Part of what people may tend to say is that you had an advantage, otherwise you wouldn't be there. It isn't true, but that's part of what you have to endure. It comes with the territory.
You know,
totally agree. And I have yet to weigh in my opinion. So I'm gonna give you my opinion. I've been acting as moderator. Now I'm gonna step over as panelist now. So I get where Santosh is coming from, but at 49 and younger than most here, except for probably Dr. Navarro, I've experienced as a black man still the areas of discrimination, and I think I'm a smart guy. But when someone continuously tells me I'm overqualified, we can't hire you. When they tell me you're underqualified, we can't hire you.
Excuses.
And these are they are the people in charge. Now let's qualify it. the people in charge do not look like the people on this screen. Period. It's funny that they're not here, because I don't see anything but minorities here, and we're supposed to be celebrating equality for all, right? I'm just gonna be honest. So it's hard for me when the folks in charge that are not of color want me to assimilate, and if I decide to assimilate, I'm still not equal, because they're not afraid of just my color, they're afraid of my intellect. They're afraid of me being smarter than them, and they will block me at every purpose. My heart isn't to do wrong, but to always do right. But people don't judge me on my heart, they judge me on my intellect and my color. You cannot get around, if you're dating a person, I don't care whether you're straight or gay, you date a person based upon what they look like, as well as their mind and their heart. They can be the smartest, ugliest person in the world, and you won't date them because they are ugly to you. Go to somewhere else, they're the smartest, beautiful person in the world. So everything that we do is based upon something that is triggered in us, that is an attraction or detraction, that I don't want to be around this person. So affirmative action helps, and it does hinder. There are folks, the people that say they got the job because they are Black, that statement can be made in two ways, or received in two ways. One is positive and one is negative. So when you hear this statement, think about the person receiving it and how they react to it. Because if they got the job because they're Black, and my Secretary of the Air Force is the first African American to be the Secretary of the Air Force, and it's 2021, it is long overdue. It took the the wife of the President of the United States to point out to her husband that you have no Blacks flying in the air, protecting the men in the air. And they're qualified to do it because I saw them do it. She then went to Tuskegee and saw them, spoke to them, went back to her husband and said, you were wrong. It took a white woman to make room for Black men. And by the way, they were called the Red Tails. And they had all successful bombing. It took a white man to lead the 54th and all-Black regiment in the Civil War. So it takes people of courage. I hope I set the tone. It takes people of courage. It takes people of faith to believe in someone else that does not look like them. And as Mr. Cook says, you have to have the courage to say, this shouldn't be an issue, and I'm not going to make it an issue, and then you open up the doors. We are waiting for people to open up the doors. If we had more people open up the doors that were of the right persuasions for other people that were not of the right persuasion, we would have achieved equality over 100 years ago. We are not there yet, and we still need, in my opinion, need the affirmative action, need the places, but I'm still mindful that I will judge a person by their content and their intelligence and their intellect to make sure that they're the right person, male or female, Black or white, red or green, for the job. And that's where we should be. And I hope one day we will get there. Now, I have a next question for you.
One more point. Can I address that question just briefly?
Yeah, my statement. Yeah, sure.
Okay, I want to address that from one of the experiences that I had in 1965 when I went with Dr. Martin Luther King's STLC for voter registration was that of trying to assist another group. Half of our group there in Macon, Georgia, was further out in the country, and they had a mechanical problem. They needed a part for their car. And so they knew that I was a little closer to a better town, so they called me. I ordered the part, and what I experienced, because my name, Shelby Jacobs, didn't give me away, my voice didn't give me away, I made the agreement on the phone. When I showed up to get the part, the guy tried to do a turnaround on me. He did a 180. Then when he turned back around, he recognized he had sold me the part. He gave it to me, and without saying so, the attitude I saw was, boy, take this part and get on out of here. The reason I tell that story to this day, 99% of the time when I have any encounter, I do it in writing with my name, Shelby Jacobs. It doesn't give me away, and I don't sound black. To this day, I still encounter that problem. If I show up black, that gives them a chance to prejudge. If I call them or write them, they have already judged, and prejudging is out the window. I practice that to this day. I do not, like I say, most of my interactions, I make sure I either call or write. I'm totally accepted, and they have to work their own problem when I get there. If we could all do that, it would be over.
Mr. Shelby, Jacobs, you are a well man. I just can't wait to sit down with you and your wife. We're going to go to dinner. I'm coming down to San Diego. And when I come, I'm coming to call you so we can sit down. You're a wealth of information.
Be sure you do. Next time we get to Vegas, we'll look you up.
Absolutely. My next question, Alan is first, Santosh is second, Doug is last. Don't take that personally, Doug. You're going to get this. What do we need to do to make the STEM program work in each of your individual industries to bring on people that are already working in the science, math, education, and then those who we need to bring up? How does that link need to work as we ascend? Because you guys are at the top of your game. What are you doing to reach back to help those move forward?
I'm not so much like organizing the STEM stuff. I'm basically there as an inspiration, I guess, to demo some of the space stuff. So it's tricky for me to try and answer that question again.
Well, let me rephrase it for you and your industry. And I say this because my ex-girlfriend was an actress for many years. You haven't worked with her, but in Hollywood, in the genre that you work in, what are you doing to pull somebody up that looks like you, that's familiar with you, that says you can make it too, and even others? What are you doing to pull people into the cinematographic era of Hollywood and transforming it, and even on the technological side, moving forward? What are you doing to help with that?
That's sort of the thing that I was talking, the Santosh stuff. I try not to see color, and basically, I've served as mentors and stuff for a lot of people, and I've probably set a bunch of people on the right career paths for them. What I do look for is passion and inspiration to succeed, and the intelligence to be able to do so. And if I see that, I will go ahead and point them towards different opportunities and paths that they can take, and regardless of color, if you will. So that's sort of what I try to be. So in a way, maybe hopefully it's we're looking at a little bit of the future of what Shelby's helped to set up, right? Is that there is eventually a time where we can, not see any color and just go that way, right?
Right. Totally agree.
Yeah.
And I want to, I'm gonna call you later, because I want to do, when you do your first documentary, I want to be that person that voiceovers it and go from there. I hope I bring some fun and
All
some
right.
and different projection to the screen. Doug, you are a techie person. Star Trek was written for you. What are you doing to bring up the next generation? And then what are you doing to encourage the generation that you're with us now or others to help change the perspective and lens and change that lens to see? And then Dr. Navarro, that's the same question for you as well.
Well, I'm going to deflect you a little bit and point out that Dr. King was a big fan of Star Trek, as you probably know.
He was.
And one of the things he did was he persuaded the actress who played Uhuru, I hope I'm saying it right, to stay with the show.
Yes,
And when I was a little kid, it was a big, I didn't realize at that time, subconsciously, I think I absorbed it, that there were characters like Uhuru and Mr. Sulu, and to some extent, Mr. Spock, who was really not human.
Yes.
That, there was possibilities like that. And, inspiration from the mass media is important. When I was part of a big company, I did mentor, hypocritically mentor some of my juniors and tell them that they should behave in some other ways that would be more productive for their careers. I've mentored school children, not very successfully always, and tutored. And I have to admit, in the last 4 years, I haven't done too much. I should do more. But my cousin, who's a teacher, recruited me to be a pen pal with elementary school children. And maybe after this, I'll try to brainwash them a little bit more with STEM ideas. But I'm sorry, I don't have any real, your question's good, and I don't have any real good answers for how to encourage it. In the last 4 years, science has been really looked down upon and bad-mouthed by certain parties. And hopefully, it starts from the top, we'll be gaining some more inspiration that science isn't so evil after all, and that there is truth.
That's my job. See, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
I inspire stuff, hopefully.
Let you do. Both of you do. Yeah, no, both of you do. And before you go, Dr. Navarro, let me say this to you, Doug. I live in the real world. I have to listen to Democrats, Republicans, sit on boards, talk to people, but then I have to go pastor. And I'm a pastor of a church, and I'm not a pastor of a black church. I'm a pastor of a church. Whether you black, white, red, or green, you just come to church. That's my belief, right? So I have to listen to things as well. What I am listening to is that there is not enough science being heard. So I have to contradict you and say that I don't hear enough from scientists and people like you, which is why I wanted to come today and be a part of this, because I don't see it. So you are the examples I need to see and go tell about as well. With thank you, thank you so much, Ken. But Dr. Navarro, I know you got a son. I know you got nieces and nephews, family, friends. Outside of that, and I know you're working on the cure for cancer and Alzheimer's and everything else. I know you're busy. But what have you been doing, or what you can do in the case of Doug, what he's going to do, poison these kids from across with a pen? What is that going to do? What are you doing to help stem the next generation and even those that are your juniors? What's happening?
Oh, so far, because of COVID, we're doing everything virtually, but I've started a program with Richmond High, which is a very low income district high school, and it's mostly Mexicans and Black students. And that's because I went to that high school, and it's very low income. And I went to that high school, and for us, our expectation was to graduate high school, and nobody even thought of people going to college. I think when I graduated, only 11 of us went to college out of like I don't know, 500 students. And so that's why I went to reach out to them. And currently I'm working with 8 to 10 scientists at the Bucks Institute to kind of mentor these students, to give them confidence. And because it's great because a lot of the scientists at the Buck are kind of like me, very like a minority and very diverse. And it's kind of, we had last week we had like an introduction to these scientists and to introduce ourselves to the students, and they were very happy because the panelists that they saw were like me and like minorities. And for me, I just want to go back to my community and tell them, to give them confidence that they can do it. Because going to Richmond High, when I went there back in 2001, a lot of my classmates said, "Oh, I'm Mexican, I'm stupid, I'm not gonna get into science," or "I'm Black, I'm not gonna go to college." And I want help to tell them that that's not true, and give them confidence that even though we're low income, there's a lot of resources for us to go to college and reach for our dreams. So yeah, currently I'm mentoring students from that school right now.
How many students are you mentoring?
So far we have 80 people signed up.
Woo!
And yeah, so it's kind of great. And we have 15 mentors that I've signed up at the Institute. So I kind of want to keep going with this program, and hopefully it expands more to different schools that have low incomes, low resources.
Well, let me be the first one to raise my hand and volunteer the time I can. I'm gonna get in trouble for that because my wife is gonna kill me. But whatever we can do to Zoom and be a part of this, we will. Youth are important to me. They are the thriving. They keep me going, keep me looking good. Y'all don't see my jacket. A young person got me this and said, "You look good in that, Pastor." I mean, it takes to keep me, Dr. Jacobs, to keep me looking youthful and cute and stuff. So I'll be the first one to volunteer for that. It's important to me that they see that, because I don't want kids to think that you just have to be pigeonholed in certain categories. And we do that in Las Vegas, that you have to work at a casino or work for the city government or the county. And in Parks and Recreation, you can't be a leader. That is a bunch of bull. So I definitely want to help in that aspect. One of my stories, and I'm getting you, Santosh Kumar, I'm going to keep saying your full name, is that I graduated high school at 1.99. I'll let that sink in. I am not the smartest person in the room. What I found out was my ability to learn was different from what they were teaching me. Mm-hmm. And so when I found that out and learned my learning language just as much as my love language, then things begin to change for me. And what I've come to find out is that kids of color learn differently, and that we've got to tap in and make sure that they can achieve it educationally if they choose to. But we have to raise their confidence, raise their confidence, and make sure that they know that they're valued more than the economic place that they're currently in. So I preach from the pulpit, never judge yourself based upon how you feel. Judge yourself based upon what you think of you and what you think of yourself for the future. And that's what we want to do. Santosh Kumar!
Yes, sir. Don't feel bad about your GPA, because a dirty little secret about me is, even though I graduated taking 9 AP classes, etc., in high school, I actually ended up being kicked out of engineering about 5 times, probably setting the school record. So I went from all the way to the top to all the way at the bottom. And talk about
perseverance.
And but in a way, it was a blessing in disguise, because that really humbled me and made me realize that, hey, not everyone who's struggling is not because they're stupid or bad. It's circumstance, and not everyone is a perfect fit for every position out there. They got to find something that works for them. So don't all ever judge yourself in that manner, is what I wanted to say.
Absolutely.
That being said, as far as STEM and outreach and so forth, I want to make a proposition here of for food for thought. it's about counterintuitiveness. Make an analogy. When you're flying an airplane and you approach an aerodynamic stall where you're going to fall out of the sky, they teach you to recover the airplane that you push the nose down and dive towards the earth, which the average person would think, why on earth would you do that? Well, the reason you do that is because that's the only way you're going to stay alive, because you got to get airflow back over the wings. But to the average person, you would think, why would you push the nose down in order to recover? So if you take that same analogy, what I have found is that the best way to bring about equality is to actually reach out to everybody, to including those that might be in the majority, because a lot of the people in the majority, you got to be able to see the other side, have this perception, real or not. And in some cases, I do believe it's real, that because of affirmative action, that they themselves have in a sense, faced discrimination. And so what I have done in a couple cases is one instance, we had a guy, a contractor who did the backyard for my parents, and we became friends. And turns out that he used to work for McDonnell Douglas, and then he was laid off years ago. I took him up flying. He was a white guy. I'm a colored person of color, and finally admitted to me that he used to be a raging racist, but it was meeting people of color and being helped by people of color that completely changed his view, his worldview on things. And so the more that we reach out to people we ordinarily would think, hey, they don't need any help, whatever, just because of their color, actually can have the unintended benefit of being an ambassador, as one of my mentors told me, saying that, hey, if we are so confident in ourselves and we are able to reach out to other people who normally we would think we would not want to, that helps them to get their check engine light to come on and say, hey, maybe we need to rethink our views on these people of color, that they're not actually as bad as we think they are, or incompetent or whatever, that if they're willing to reach out to someone like us, and they have no reason to, maybe that will get them on board, that we need to work to fix the system for equality for all. And to that effect, when it comes to STEM programs or whatever, I don't focus on just simply saying, okay, we should have this one for this minority or whatever. I say, okay, we have the STEM program, open up to everybody. If there are people that are not represented, then reach out to the person. Hey, we have the STEM program, join in, apply for it, because you never know, you may get selected. And I think, there is something to be said that, there is implicit bias. Everybody has bias. So we need to work towards eliminating the bias. I think that's more the better way to go, rather than just blind quotas. Eventually, we should work towards sunsetting quotas and focus towards eliminating bias and educating people that it is not necessary to discriminate based on race, that you never know, that you could be helped by someone who you ordinarily would not think. I'll give you a classic example to finish up. Marcus Luttrell, he was the lone survivor with SEAL Team 4, I believe, SEAL Team 3 or 4 in Afghanistan, and he's a redneck Texan, self-admitted, but he is the first to tell you that anyone who says that all Muslims are bad, they're full of crap, because his life was saved by honorable Muslims in Afghanistan who they could have killed him, but it was because of their code of honor that they took him under his wing to risk their life and limb to protect a hillbilly. And because of that, that changes view on things. And so that's a classic example of how reaching out to everybody, even if you think that they may already be advantaged or whatever, can actually have the unintended benefit of helping us and everybody as well.
Absolutely. Dr. King was, appropriately on TNT this morning. They played the movie by Spike Lee, Malcolm X. And it was a clear reminder to me, the involvement of a man who at the end of his life, he publicly said, I was wrong to include all white people are wrong, all white people are devils. That he went on his journey to Mecca to find that there was a blue-eyed, blonde-haired white man that called him brother because they shared the same faith. It is wrong to look at everyone and blanket them and say everybody is wrong. We are all, what do you say? Yeah, we are all on the same island together. I just never believed there were continents. We just all big islands, small islands, what have you. We inhabit a land, and I just believe that we can achieve what we need to achieve. And as Dr. King would say, we cannot stamp out hate with hate. We can only stamp out hate with love. And that love must come from eternal. It must come from internal, and that you can overcome it. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to see the atrocities of what people do wrong, but let us make sure we do not react the same way. And that has been a challenge. The older I get, the better I'll be. The older I get, I'll be like Mr. Jacobs one day, Mr. Cook, and get there and see, because when I see these two gentlemen on here, I see two African American men I'm very proud of, that make me want to go on. Very proud of Mr. Cook and his career and what he has done as a veteran, as an intelligent man who is sitting in his home comfortably because he is taking the fruits of his labor, and he has built a life for him and his family. And I don't know you, sir, but I'm just very proud to share the same melatonin, because I look at you and I see a hero. And I want to tell you thank you on this day for what you've done. Mr. Jacobs is the same. For years, we didn't know in school who did that photo. We didn't know who helped in those times. We didn't know the hidden figures behind the scenes of NASA. And everything, if you remember what I said, I grew up Star Trek, Buck Rogers, $6 Million Man, all those things that were Air Force and space. But here I am on the same panel and discussion with the men and women that are Black that helped produce that. You cannot imagine the honor that I have sitting here to be on this Zoom dais with you. I thank you for your sacrifice. I thank you for your incredible, incredible patience and love. And I am too blessed to be and proud to have been or be a transition as a puppeteer in the pulpit for Christ that your father had done as well. So I'm honored today. I'm honored with Doug and Alan. Alan, I'm so proud of you to see the work that you have done. To meet you is pure joy for me as a movie historian. To see you is a pleasure. Doug, your honesty is so forthright. You placate yourself, and it cracks me up. But I know sitting there is a man who can multiply faster than most computers and think things through. And I'm very happy to know you. Dr. Navarro, you are, I mean it, I'm going to help you. You are an inspiration to what you do, the challenges you have overcome economically in your youth. To be where you're at today is such a true blessing. I'm just so proud of you. And I know your family is even prouder of what you have done. And so we're thankful for your presence on this earth and the life that you give. Santos Kumar, man, you have the youthful exuberance that we need, that has to be in our earth today. In our earth.
To practice Martin Luther King, we need to practice judgment by conduct of character.
Say it one more time. You broke up. Mr. Jacobs, say it one more time.
Sorry, did you hear me?
Say it one more time.
I said we must all We must all learn to live by Dr. Martin Luther King's saying, live by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Included in that is gender. If we learn to do that and advocate that, people would be able to be more fair by what they see inside, not what they see outside.
And with that being said, that's the last word on this whole topic. Let us put our hands together for Mr. Ken, who has taken care of all of this. Thank you so very much, Ken. The AIAA LA Las Vegas chapter, thank you so very much. To all of you, God's blessings to all of you. May He shine upon you and give you peace and grace. And we will exit from here and keep celebrating. I am catching a plane. I got to get to another MLK location. Let's go. Let's have a great day. Thank you so much. I look forward to talking to each of you.
Thank you so much,
see you-
Master
till we
Ivy.
see
This
you
is
again.
amazing. Well, I wish you will be back with us more time. And all the panelists are amazing. Please stay in touch with AIAA. Shelby, you want to say something?
PM.
I was just saying that my parting words, I used to say, talk to you later. Now with high tech, I can say, see you later. That is an advancement in technology. I no longer am limited to talk to you. I can see you later. That's a blessing.
Yeah, it's a blessing. And today is a blessed day. And thanks to every one of you, and thanks to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It's amazing. Yeah, so enjoy the rest of the day and the week. Wish you, Pastor Ivy, and all the panelists will be back with us again. So stay in touch. We'll have more events. We'll be glad to have you all. Or individually. Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all, and great job by the pastor in moderating.
Yeah, Pastor is amazing.
Yeah.
Very dynamic.
Okay, I'll see y'all later.
See you later, Victor. Great to see you.
All right.
Yeah, stay in touch.
Mr.